Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name's Rob Riley, and Ken Durand and I are the backstage people after the event gets started. Okay, well, thank you for coming to the Jim Bregman Invites You To series. Certainly, our host is needs no introduction. Sensei Jim Bregman is the USA's first Olympic medalist, a bronze medal in '64 at the Tokyo Games, followed by a bronze medal at the next year's World Championships. He has been involved in judo since then. He has been president of the USJA and a voice of wisdom and knowledge to all of us. With that said, let me turn the event over to Jim Bregman. Sensei Bregman.
Thank you, Rob, very much. I am greatly pleased and honored to introduce my friend and fellow Olympian, Jimmy Pedro. To give you a little background on Mr. Pedro's history, starting currently, he's the owner of Fuji Mats and Fuji Sports. He heads the Pedro Judo Center, which is just outside of Boston. His competitive career is rather astonishing, winning 29 gold medals in international competition. He competed in the 92, 96, 2000, and 2004 Olympic Games, which is a rather amazing record. He won 2 bronze medals in the Olympics in 96 and 2004. In 1999, he won the gold medal and became a world champion of judo. He has coached Kayla Harrison, the Olympic gold medalist, and many other students. And today, Jim is going to take us through what it takes in the modern era to become an Olympic athlete or a world championship contender, and to highlight some of the obstacles and necessary activities that it takes to reach that elite level of competition. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pedro.
Well, first of all, thank you all for having me on. I really do appreciate it. Anytime we can talk about judo, promote judo, educate people about judo. I mean, that's what we're all about, right? We've spent our life in the sport. We want it to grow. We want it to succeed. We want to see American athletes do their best in competition and win medals. That's what makes us proud. And that's what gets us up every day to train more athletes and to still be involved in the sport of judo. So thank you guys for having me on. Hopefully there's lots of questions and you guys, it's not me just talking for incessantly here for a period of time. You know, the back and forth, I think is what matters most, and people getting a chance to ask questions that they might not know or, you know, the answers to. But, you know, when I look historically at the athletes that have won medals at the Olympics from the United States, obviously, you know, without a doubt, it takes, you know, many years of practicing the sport and dedicating your sport, but doing it also full time, you know, and really ingraining yourself into spending time on the mat, you know, to perfect your craft. But above and beyond that, I think all of us, if you look back at, you know, Jim Bregman, you look back at Michael Swain, Jason Morris, myself, you know, Ronda Rousey, Kayla Harrison, Travis Stevens, a lot of us spent a considerable amount of time in our career in Japan, you know, training with the Japanese national team or training at a university, you know, staying there for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to as long as 6 months or even longer, right? And just getting that pure judo technique, feel, randori after randori with high level people. That's what made many of us what we ultimately became. And, you know, I know in my career, it wasn't the most fun thing to do, to go over Japan and just get smashed around by a bunch of people. But it is what it took to get to the next level. And all of us did it, and all of us did it many, many times. And, as an athlete, I did it. And then as a coach, I demanded it of my athletes, and I sent them to Japan and, set them up to train there, went to national team training camps in Japan, and they grumbled and they hated it. They hated it, right? Because it was a different culture. They were very far away from home. The amenities of Japan aren't the same as they are in the United States, although today it's much better than it used to be. But, the food is different. They've got jet lag, their whole day is just judo, 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 right? And it was a lot, but I think it was those types of training experience that took their judo to another level, right? And they realized that, after a period of time and getting your hands on them and getting used to the reactions, getting used to just being exhausted and having to just fight with your body and defend yourself with your body, your judo does go to another level. And I think that today, the athletes that we have currently right now in this country, maybe with the exception of Colton Brown, who just came off the Olympic team, not many of them or any of them spent any time in Japan training for a long period of time. They might have gone to Japan to the Tokyo Grand Slam and fought in a contest, maybe did a 3-day camp afterwards and came home. But I think those relationships have been lost with the Japanese. And I think it's something that we have to get back to if we want our team to succeed at the highest level, because that is one necessity that anybody who wants to make it to the Olympic level, they're going to have to do and have a chance to win. They're going to have to be able to contend with the Japanese, understand that style of judo, and be able to compete with that style of judo in order to succeed. The other thing that's necessary is spending considerable amount of time in Europe, because the Europeans have a vastly different style of judo, much more physical, much more awkward gripping sequences, different types of techniques, much more explosive with their judo. Again, that's something that lots and lots of competitions, but more importantly, in between the competitions is spending a considerable of time there with the top teams in the country, whether it be, France or Germany, or, spending some time in Spain. Has a great judo team right now. I know some of our athletes have an exchange program going on right now in Spain, also in Israel, which is helping get our judoka to another level. But spending a lot of time in Europe, getting your hands on different Europeans is very, very important to succeed at the highest level. And it's not just competing, it's actually training with every single one of them, because you get the feel for that physicality. And again, you're only as good as your competition. So if you're not leaving the States, you're not competing against anybody that's really that tough. And it's very, very tough to make it to an Olympic podium or even an Olympic team without exposing yourself to that level of judo and that frequently. And I look back at my career when I was young and I was maybe, 18, 19 years old. I went on a 6-week stint in Europe where I'd start in Paris and I'd fight in the Paris, the Tournoi de Paris, spend a week at a training camp at the INSEP in France, take a train to Austria, go compete in a tournament in Austria the very next weekend, stay for a camp, in Austria for a week, get on a train, go right to the next stop, which was typically Germany, then go from same thing, fight in a tournament, do a training camp, then go to the next place, which was Hungary, fight in a tournament, go to a training camp, and then I'd stop in Czechoslovakia. So in 6 weeks, I'd have 5 international competitions. I'd have 5 training camps. You get there a little early, you leave there a little later because you want to see something while you're there. And, it was a 6-week stint. And I remember fighting, as many as 25 matches in that 6 weeks, plus, not to mention the hundreds and hundreds of randoris I did with the best guys in the world. So you've got to get out of the States and you've got to go international if you're going to have a chance, because the judo is it's totally different level. And those are two of them. I mean, that's obviously two of the main things that I think you need to do is push yourself past your comfort zone and do those things frequent and often. But in addition to that, it's the style of judo that you have to learn to play if you want to contend and beat the rest of the people in the world. And if you just play the Japanese style, you're not going to beat the Japanese. If you just play European style judo, you're not going to beat the Europeans, because you're not going to be as good at them at their own game. You're going to have to find a way to beat each different individual with a different style, which, to us is, we call the American judo style, right? Which is, for us now, it's more about understanding gripping and positioning and how to get your hands in a place where you can actually score on your opponent, as well as defend yourself against people that maybe have awkward gripping styles. To having a great newaza game and be able to beat people on the ground. Again, if you look back historically at Mike Swain or Kayla Harrison or Travis Stevens or myself or anybody else, had really good newaza. And a lot of times, one win or two wins in a competition against tough opponents, beating them on the ground, helped us get to the podium. And it helped us, on Kayla's instance, it helped her win a gold. In Travis's instance, helped her win a silver medal. And in my instance, it helped me win 2 bronze medals. Like, you're not going to get there beating everybody on your feet doing classic stand-up judo. It's just too difficult being an American, having lost all of those years of hard competition and hard randoris, to think you're going to beat, the rest of the world at their game. You might be able to beat one guy, but to put 5-6 wins together against the top in the world doesn't happen without some sort of systematic approach to making it happen. And I think one of the other big obstacles that we have right now in the United States is that I feel that judo was much more popular. There was much higher level of competition. When we go back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I think those generations, the level of judo in this country was far superior than it is today. And one of the reasons for that is that, all of the older, Japanese dojos and that great senseis that dedicated their lives to making great athletes, and they did it professionally. I think, Yanni Inesca and Cahill and the Cohens and everybody else, like, they dedicated their lives to teaching the sport, and they produced some really good athletes, and I think today, because judo is such a tough sport financially on the athletes that compete in it, they don't stay in the sport and give back and help others and open dojos, because they have to go make a living for themselves, and so all of the old senseis have sort of died off, or their clubs have closed at this point. And when you look at, like, the base level of judo in this country and the teachers in this country, the level has gone down significantly. Doesn't mean that there's not effort, doesn't mean there's not passion, doesn't mean people don't, still don't care and still don't try their best. It's just, I feel like the technical of the waza has gone way down. Simple things like posture, having good posture, having good technique, the ability to throw, you watch some of the junior national championships now, and you don't see a nice Uchimata, you don't see a great Osotogari, you don't see, like, really fantastic technique. You see people winning matches, sure, in tough fights, and the kids are tough, but when you look at, where our judo is compared to the rest of the world, I feel like we've dropped off considerably. It's nobody's fault. It's just the way that the sport is in this country. So that's when you as a child, when you have great competition in the United States, and it pushes you to another level, right? When you go to nationals, I remember junior nationals fighting 8-9 times to win a national championships. Some of our kids win the nationals now with 3 people in the division, or, they have 2 matches or 4 matches and they're done. They don't have the depth in their junior divisions that gives them that foundation of that foundational excellence and tough competition to rise to the top and reach another level. And then if you think about financially, what an obstacle it is, to try to qualify for an Olympic Games today, and how much money that costs. That's why there's a lot less athletes at the top trying to go and do these things, because they don't have the financial resources to do it, and now we might have one athlete in each division, or at the most maybe 2 athletes in a division that can hold their own internationally. But you go back to the 80s and 90s in that day, and you had a lot of people that won a lot of medals in a lot of different weight classes at some of the best tournaments in the world. I look back at our 92 Olympic team, and, you have myself at 65 kilos, who was a world medalist and a contender for a medal in the Olympics. You had Mike Swain at the next weight up, who was, a world champion, who was already an Olympic medalist, who had a chance in Barcelona. You had Jason Morris, who was already a medalist in the Olympics. You had five people on the men's side, and you had 2 or 3 girls that had a chance for a medal, and they had won, the German Open, or they had placed in Japan, or we're talking about a really deep Olympic team, back in 92. So, today, our kids and our athletes, they don't have as much opportunity. They don't have the coaching that, the highest level coaching that you need all the time to be with you on the road. They don't have the financial resources to get there. And let's face it, the rest of the world has gotten significantly better at the sport. They're investing far greater money than they ever have before. The number of competitions, the number of professional coaches, the amount of money that's in the sport right now. You think about, $25,000 to an American is not a lot of money, right, to live in this country. But to somebody from Cuba, or to somebody from, some of the Russian republics, you think about Hungary, or you think about Bulgaria. I mean, $25,000 is a lot of money in their country. So the better athletes are staying longer, fighting more, because they can make their livelihood and feed their families from the sport of judo now. So for all those reasons, I think those are some of the musts. I think some of the obstacles we face are obviously, like I said, the financial obstacle. We have the lack of depth in competition in this country to push our athletes to higher levels. There's obviously now less competitions in the United States for the senior athletes than there ever was before. I think back when I was a kid, coming up 16, 18, 20 years old. I mean, every single year we fought in the national championships. Everybody fought in the nationals. Today, almost nobody fights in the nationals if they're already an international player. Everybody had to also fight in a sports festival where you had the best eight guys in the country all fighting a round robin tournament against 7 matches at a sports festival, fighting the best people in the country. Then we'd have a world team trials every year, or an Olympic team trials every year. So again, you're fighting everybody in the country. And that doesn't include the US Open and other tournaments that were here on domestic soil that were really high level tournaments. And right now we have two tournaments really in this country. We got the Nationals, which nobody goes to, and we got the New York Open, which is a team tournament. Where else do our athletes fight in this country? They don't. All their matches are international, and most of them, are going to tournaments that are a little bit above their head, in attempts to try to qualify for an Olympics. So there's not a lot of development that's happening for most of them.
I couldn't agree more.
So that was just my introduction, but that's
that was a very profound and very astute explanation of the current state of American judo. And I think what people don't understand or haven't gotten a grip on, that in order to become excellent in anything, it takes 10,000 hours of effort. There have been studies done over time that say it takes 10,000 hours of effort. So if your effort is in a local dojo or even a regional dojo, or as Mr. Pedro said, a national competition where you only have 6 matches over a year, you are a long way from 10,000 hours. In 1960, I went to Japan. I stayed there for 4 years, and it was excruciating. The first year and a half, I got thrown all over the place. The second year, I started doing a little better. And what Jim said is actually true. You can learn the mechanics by listening to a coach, but you can't learn the physicality, the body reactions, the unconscious movements, the subtle, quick activity by not doing hard randori. That's just the fact of life. And in this country today, sadly, we do not have the in-depth numbers concentrated in one place to get that level of intensity. And what Jim said is absolutely true. You have to go to Japan, France, Britain, Germany, and train. The difficulty we've got is finances. How do we do that? And part of the difficulty is that back in my day, we had about 50,000 people doing judo. The Denver School of Judo had 200 students. The Chicago School had a couple of hundred. Washington Judo Club had a couple of hundred. California dojos probably had 200 to 300 people. How many people are in the dojos today? Right, not too many. Where can the local regional tournaments be accelerated? How do we outreach and bring people into the dojos? I have this observation, and if anyone would like to comment, I'd be glad to hear it. But if you look at the best practices of Taekwondo, BJJ, karate, they have recruitment tools and public relations tools and things like after-school programs. And many of these dojos have full-time teachers, and they recruit and they advertise. They give demos, they bring kids in. I'm not sure that on a major scale, we're doing much of that at all now. And without the numbers at the grassroots level, it's going to be extremely difficult for us to be competitive at the international level, because as Jim said, many of these international activities have, for example, France has 625,000 registered members. They have professional judo teachers who are called professors. They have huge dojos, and more importantly, early on, they got judo into the school system. So people in France may not be teachers, they might not be athletes, but many of them has been exposed to judo. And when you go to a tournament in France, the stands are packed. The stands are packed. And it's not all the people from all over the country, it's people from France. It's people from Great Britain, because they know what it takes. And when they're observing judo, they can say, oh, wow, did you see that entry to Uchimata? Did you see how he did that? That's amazing what just happened. And they're fist bumping each other in the stands. We don't have that. So I guess one of the questions is, what is USA Judo doing to develop our international talent? Are we getting any financial support to the athletes, or is it all self-funded, GoFundMe, local dojo activity? How can we increase the participation level, the intensity of that participation, and the financial resources necessary? Any ideas on that?
Well, first and foremost, the Olympic Committee is a pay for performance type of association, right? So the Olympic Committee wants you to put your money into your top guns. They want to say, they go to the sport of judo and they say, okay, USA Judo, and they go to every NGB and they say, show us who's tracking for this next Olympics. Give us your best and it starts out at the beginning of the quadrennial with a larger number. So maybe you can pitch them on. I have 8 athletes that have a chance right now to do well in 2028, let's say, or 2024, whatever Olympics you're trending towards. You give them your top picks. This is my top prospects. They say, okay, we're going to give you this amount of budget for these top prospects, but the money has to be used on those athletes. right? So so Ed Liddy and the high performance team will put together a program for those 8 athletes. And in some cases, it includes a monthly stipend anywhere from maybe $500 a month to $2,000 a month per athlete just to train. In addition to that, those athletes will get their way paid to a certain number of tournaments. Maybe they get to go to a couple of tournaments in Europe, a couple of training camps. The Pan Ams is funded for them. If they meet the criteria, they get to go to the World Championships, fully funded to the World Championships. And that's the budget for the team. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to use it for the athletes that weren't in the top 8. Okay. So when you see online people complaining saying, hey, I made the world team and I didn't get funded. Well, it's because A, there's a limited budget, and B, the Olympic Committee has told you where you need to spend your money. Okay. So that's right. Some of those athletes going to world championships didn't get funded to the worlds because they didn't meet the criteria to be funded from the beginning of the quad, or during the course of that quad, the next 4 years, they didn't have performances that got them to the next level to be considered as a prospect, because every year you can start with 8, but 3 could drop off and 2 could come in. You say, hey, now I got 7, but these 2 are better than these other 3. And you can maneuver it. But if nobody breaks that threshold, then they're not going to get funded pretty much that entire quad. And the sad part is that you can't use the money either for any of your junior programs, for any of your youth programs. It's just for Olympic performance. So that's the high performance committee at the United States USA Judo, is they're not really allowed to spend it. They have a small budget for camps and clinics that they can sprinkle around to some of the juniors and things like that to get them exposed or to get them to train with the top athletes in the country. They really don't have a lot of money at their disposal to spend on others. And that's the problem, So, but the top athletes, they do get taken care of. Right. The last quad, Angie Delgado and Colton Brown and, the others that made the Olympic team, they would get a monthly stipend and they would have most of their trips, not all, but most of their trips were paid for. And if they weren't paid for, most of them are members of the New York Athletic Club, and the New York Athletic Club stepped up and also reimbursed them or paid them to go and compete.
Right.
To represent the NYC. So, but it's in terms of how we get there in the future. I mean, it's going to take, like you said, Jim, everything comes from numbers. You have 625,000 people doing judo in your country, and you take $10 from each one of them to go towards your performance program. You now have a $6 million budget. You can fund a lot of athletes any way you want with $6 million.
Yes. You certainly can.
So, it is getting numbers. It is trying to get more numbers in the sport. We did just partner, meaning myself and Travis, we just partnered with USA Judo on an initiative, AmericanJudo.com or USAJudo.com. We have an online learning platform trying to put everybody on the same page of learning. We broke techniques down from shadow movements you do by yourself to learn the skills and the steps to do each technique, all the way up from, basic uchikomi, basic nagi komi, basic movement stuff. Then we went up to the intermediate level and put together, combination techniques to that favorite technique, and then all the way up to advanced level stuff where you're putting together multiple combinations or multiple different changes in stance and position. So we did a single technique from the basic white belt level all the way to the black belt level, where you can learn Uchimado, you can learn Tao Toshi, we have like 12 to 15 different standing techniques now. We've covered a lot of the Newaza stuff. We're getting into coaching. We're getting into promotions. We're getting into a lot of things just to give people 24/7 access to an online platform where they can learn judo, regardless of where they are in the country. They can actually study and learn judo and go out in their home dojo and practice. We eventually want to roll this out to refereeing, coaches, certifications, programs, because think about right now in America, if you want to go become let's say you say, I know what, I want to go learn about refereeing. How do you learn to become a referee right now in this country? You got to wait for the next tournament to come around in your area. Well, that might not be for 6 months. If you're eager to learn now, why don't we go to you online, have you start studying some videos, start showing you some judo, get you asking questions, get you taking some sort of online certification that you says, I know this stuff. I'm ready. you know, and so I think it's important. We have to catch up to the 21st century here, right? And do stuff online, because just like this Zoom call, you can educate people about judo anytime, any place, if they're willing to learn. And, you know, you look at BJJ and you look at what even wrestling's doing, they have access to the best athletes all the time through DVDs, online videos, watching competitions on the internet nonstop.
Right.
And the sports are growing. And that's what judo needs. Judo needs more online access. And I don't mean at the Olympic level, right?
No.
I mean, we can watch the Grand Slams and Grand Prix, and the IJF has done a phenomenal job of promoting the highest level of this sport. But unfortunately, for 99.5% of Americans, that level's too high. It's beyond their comprehension, right? It's kind of like watching gymnastics. You see the girl do 4 backflips off of the high beam. You go, well, I probably can't do that, right? And you can't do, most of the judoka in this country couldn't think about doing what the guys at the Olympic level are doing with the sport. But at the lower level, learning base foundational movements, good technique, getting back to good posture, good stance, good hand position, good waza, that can all be learned right here at your local dojo and learned online.
Excellent. What is the URL for that, Jim? What is the name of the?
It is
of the
americanjudo.com. It is a membership. It's a membership website that we've put together a program with USA Judo that every member who registered, they get online access to the platform.
Excellent.
And we're hoping to build that out to be, you know, like I said, help coaches grow their dojos, help them teach judo better, certify coaches. I eventually get into a referee certification program, which we're just rolling out now, to get some young blood, young referees into the refereeing program, making it cool, making it exciting, have them referee some small kid matches. They don't need to be, you know, 50-year-old guys refereeing, you know, 6, 7-year-olds doing judo, right? So we're trying to do a lot of things differently and to grow the sport. At the end of the day, the number one thing is to grow this sport in this country and get more people doing it.
Excellent. Congratulations on getting that done.
Thank you.
If we have a question here, and maybe you could walk someone through this. So it says, I'm a judoka at a local YMCA. This is a hypothetical. I train twice a week. That won't get me to the Olympic level or even to the national level. So what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? Who do I need to train with in this country to enhance my skill level and to realize some better level of competition?
Well, I think you have to find a place, maybe hopefully locally to you, that has a good coach. It starts with good coaching, right? And a good program. Somebody that has lots of people for you to train with that are better than you, and a coach who has, you know, good knowledge, good technique, who can teach you, lead you, guide you, right? And it's about you're right. You can't train just twice a week and think you're going to win internationally. Some cases you might be able to do okay at the nationals. Depends on what division you're in, and depends on if you're male or you're female. But, you know, not everybody in our country trains 6, 7 days a week. A lot of people that are only training three times a week that are doing okay nationally. But you need to find a good coach and a good program, and you got to be in a room with people that are better than you. And when you're the best person in the room, then I say you move on and you go to another dojo that has even better people than you. And if you want to keep making that jump up the ladder, keep challenging yourself and keep getting out of your comfort zone, and make sure you're not the best guy in the room all the time.
That's excellent advice. Could you give us some examples of dojos that you could recommend throughout the country, maybe some on the East Coast, some on the West Coast, and something maybe in the middle, where young aspiring athletes, once they hit that I'm best in this dojo, where can they go?
I mean, it really depends on where you're from, right? I'm trying to make it so that, you know, you don't have to pick up and make a massive move across the country, pick up your entire life and,
Right.
you know, throw all your life savings away. Initially, you need to find a strong local club in your area that has players that have been there and done that, right? So if your goal is to be a national champion, national place winner, go to a place that has produced other national place winners, or if you want to be on the international circuit, then you've got to go to a place that has produced athletes that have gone internationally and done well. So, whether you're from Texas or Florida, what have you, find that coach, find that place. I mean, Kitsusai is a training program that they have in Florida right now. A lot of the top girls are there right now. They've got some young up and coming kids out of Kitsusai in Florida that's doing well. So if you're from that area, you might go there. If you're on the West Coast, you might want to go to San Jose State, right? I mean, San Jose has a college program. They've got a lot of guys in a dojo. If you don't go to school there, Chuck Jefferson has a dojo in Southern California. You can go to his dojo on the East Coast. I mean, Colton Brown was an Olympian. He just opened a dojo. He's got tons of time and energy, and he's doing judo professionally. You've also got Yaneska, Nikki. I want to say the young kid, but he's in his 60s now. But Nikki's got two boys that are training hard, and they're in the Jersey area. They've got a good program in Boston. You can come to us if you want. Here in Wakefield, Mass. In the middle of the country, you got the Cohen brothers have a good program. Steve's involved coaching there. You've got Aaron and his brother RJ that run a good program. They've got one of the top 90 kids in the country right now. Right. So Jason Morris's place. I mean, there's dojos with coaches that have produced high-level athletes and have produced Olympians. So those are probably some of the best places to go. I'm sure I missed some, and there's plenty of others, but they're just examples of places you can go to get better at the sport domestically without spending a ton of money.
Thank you for that advice. And you've named some very, very good dojos, and I'm sure there are many more. And Jimmy, do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make?
Oh boy. Good question. Well, as I look to 2028, and the United States is gonna have a full team on the judo mat, right? I mean, right now, in order to make it to the Olympics in 2024, it's more difficult than it was even last year. So you have to be top 17 now in the world on the international roster if you plan on making the Olympic team. So that's harder than it was. It used to be 18. Now it's down to 17. Back in 2012, it was top 22. So it keeps shrinking the number of, athletes that can go to the Olympic Games. So coming up for 2024, it's going to be a tough run to get, more than 2 on the Olympic team, probably the way we're trending right now. Hopefully not. Hopefully more young kids will step up. But right now it's going to be tough to get 2 on the team. But come 2028, this country has a huge opportunity to get behind the sport of judo, to grow your dojo, create that Olympic excitement again, because we will have a full team on the mat in 2028. 7 men, 7 women, plus a team tournament where 14 athletes from the United States will get to compete in the Olympic Games. So that's going to be the biggest and fullest team we've ever had since I think since the year 2000, right? Where we had a full team. So that's exciting. You can keep people motivated and energized in your dojo for a chance to compete in the Olympic trials, because I believe there will be an Olympic trials for the team in 2028. So maybe the top 5 athletes or top 8 athletes. I don't think USA Judo has decided how it's going to select its Olympic team, but I got to believe if they're not automatically qualified already, there will be a trials for everybody else. And that's going to be exciting for all of us, because for once, we're not going to know who's going to go, right? And that's the other thing I think that's been a challenge, and one of the reasons why we've seen a decline in top performance is that for the last, 12 years, let's say, I'm not sure the right number, but anybody who's had the money to be able to compete internationally has been able to go anywhere in the world they want to go to compete, irregardless if whether they were really qualified to be on that mat or not. And I don't think that's a good way to select teams and to it's sure they get experience. I get it. They're getting a chance to get out of this country and compete, but they're going to tournaments that are above their level, meaning 1 win or 2 wins. If you look at the statistics, I'm not playing favorites or anything like that. If you looked at statistics of the United States team and actually how many wins our athletes are getting on average at any of these tournaments, the average number of wins is less than one. When you combine all the athletes together, we're getting less than one win per athlete at every tournament. That is not a good return on your investment when you're investing a lot of money. And, when there's no money in the sport, you've got people investing that much money in it. It's not really a good return on your investment. But when you go to something where a trials basis, or you go to something where it's performance based, in order to go to that next level, you've got to do this. And you got to perform at a high level under pressure. And it's not just about having the money. It's you got to win, and then you get to go. And when you create a program like that, where everybody has the same chance to earn their spot, and it actually means something to be on that team, that's when you start seeing performance go up, in my opinion. So having a trials or having a national championships, it says, you want to go international, you've got to show up and fight in our nationals and prove you're the best every single year. And you've got to make the podium. If you don't make the podium at the nationals, you don't leave the country. Other than you can go to Canada, you can go to, other tournaments that are developmental tournaments, but you can't compete on the IGF World Tour unless you can medal in our country. You make that the criteria, and then from there, maybe you have a trials for the world team. If nobody's top 20 something in the world, maybe there's a trial. So you got to pay to go to the world trials, compete and win, and then you get a chance to go to world championships. Then you've earned your spot on the world team. A lot of slots on the world team now are earned because they have more money to go on more trips, and they get one win or two wins at, beating people that aren't really that good. They get a lot of international points, and then the person that's actually better than them doesn't have the money and can't go, and they end up not making a world team or a Pan Am team. So that's not the best way to put the best athlete on the mat. So that's something that I think I would change if it was my decision.
Couldn't agree with you more. Jimmy, I want to thank you very much for participating in this.
Of course.
And I really appreciate your insights, because I think they are spot on and very accurate. And I would encourage the general judo community to listen to this presentation and heed your advice, because it's absolutely spot on and accurate. And with that, I will thank you again very much for your participation and all you do for American Judo, which is a major contribution. Thanks,
Thank you.
Jimmy.
It's
Thank
my
you so
pleasure,
much.
guys. Thank you, and have a
Okay.
wonderful evening. Appreciate
You
it.
too. Take care.
Thank you, guys. Okay.
Bye-bye.